Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto, Chapter 22, The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, Text 12. Ujyatasya hikamasya prativaro nasasyate apinir mukta sangasya kama raktasya kim punaha ujyatasya, which has come of itself. He, in fact, kamasya, of material desire. Prativada, the denial. Na, not. Sasyate, to be praised. Api, even. Nirmukta, of one who is free. Sangasya, from attachment. Kama, to sensual pleasures. Raktasya, of one addicted. Kim puna, how much less. Translation: to deny an offering that has come of itself is not commendable, even for one absolutely free from all attachment, much less one addicted to sensual pleasure. Purport: in material life, everyone is desirous of sense gratification. Therefore, a person who gets an object of sense gratification without endeavor should not refuse to accept it. Kardama Muni was not meant for sense gratification, yet he aspired to marry and prayed to the Lord for a suitable wife. This was known to Swayambhuva Manu. He indirectly convinced Kardama Muni, "You desire a suitable wife, like my daughter, and she is now present before you. You should not reject the fulfillment of your prayer. You should accept my daughter." Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In any real human civilization, marriage is a very important institution, both for the individuals marrying and for the well-being of society. Without stable family life, how can the human mind be peaceful? Most human beings need to go through family life. And in this way, good progeny, good children come into existence. And the world can become a better place when there are stable families who know how to bring into the world advanced children. This is why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dharma Varuda Bhuteshu Kamosmi Bharatarshava. I am procreative activity according to Dharma, when performed according to Dharma. I remember once hearing Srila Prabhupada say, and all the brahmacharis would blush, he said, you can experience Krishna in this way. Just like Rasaham Apsukonteya, Krishna's the taste of water. So when you drink the water, you think Krishna's the taste, you're seeing Krishna. Similarly, Krishna says, I am sex life according to Dharma. You can experience Krishna in that way. Of course, there are different ways to approach that according to one's ashram. Kardama Muni has already indicated his desire to marry. He's not really kama raktasya, addicted to sense pleasure. But Swayambhuva Manu is letting Gautam Muni know that it's well understood that you want to marry and you're looking for a suitable wife. And you have prayed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for a suitable wife. So therefore, here she is. This chapter is very famous for its elegance in social dealings. You can really see the beauty and charm and sanity of Vedic culture. Of course, today we don't have Vedic culture. We have hell. In which everyone just acts according to what they think is good for their immediate sense gratification. There are two things in life, Shreyas and Preyas. There is what is Shreyas, the ultimate good, and what is Preyas, what is immediately, seemingly beneficial. So real human culture focuses on what is the ultimate good. But the amazing thing is that that ultimate good is also the immediate good. So the best thing you can do for your ultimate goal in life is bhakti, and the best thing you can do for your immediate goals in life is bhakti. When you have a human society that has a head on its body, that's what the Brahmana occupational varna is meant to provide, a head on the social body. Without that head on the social body, how can you expect anything except chaos? Just like in countries that claim to have democracies. That means the welfare of the nation depends on the quality of the voters. Unless there is some program in place for uplifting the quality of the people in a democracy, the voters, then how do you expect any good? It's like the example Prabhupada would give, that you walk into a barnyard full of different types of animals and you expect them to be very nice and quiet. They're not trained, so all kinds of havoc and chaos goes on. You can't just say, my dear animals, be peaceful. They don't know how. So similarly, all thoughts of world peace without a head on the social body, without Brahmanas guiding society, they're just fantasy. You're dealing with persons who have not yet become human beings. A human being means at least one who can control the mind and senses. Without that, you have animal life. So this chapter is presenting to you the very sweet and practical, pragmatic teamwork between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. They both are giving protection to one another. The Brahmanas are protecting the Kshatriyas, the administrative and martial class, by their austerity and their knowledge. Someone who is a Brahmana doesn't simply wear a thread around his shoulder. A real Brahmana shows detachment from material life and attachment for knowledge. So the Brahmana protects the administrative class with austerity and knowledge. And in turn, the Kshatriyas, the administrative or martial class, protect the Brahmanas physically. So in this way, there is such cooperation and coordination in a real human society. But currently, we have no head on the social body. We have practically no kshatriyas. Basically, you have merchants and laborers, whether in high leadership positions or not. And this is the great tragedy of human society today. Very few know what to do, and fewer still have the willpower and dedication to get something done. So therefore, everyone just says, let me get as much for myself as I can. So this chapter shows you the beauty of cooperation in a real human society. By this teamwork between Kardama Muni and Swayambhuva Manu. And what about Devahuti? She's of marrying age. And how is it that she is interested in Kardama Muni? And how does she express her interest? Does she say, oh, I'm 12 years old, it's time to go to some parties? Like what is quite acceptable amongst even educated families these days. I know in Australia and New Zealand, of course not yet in Indian households, but it's coming. Another 20 years. So in Australia and New Zealand, amongst parents, when the daughter is 13 or 14 and she's starting to have boyfriends, what do the parents say? Who knows? No one knows? No. They say, yes, they say whatever makes you happy. As long as you're happy, we're happy. But what do they say? Come, bring him home. He can stay with you at home in your room. That's considered very enlightened. Why have our daughter running around here and there in secret places? They're going to have boyfriends, so let her bring him home. Let him stay in her room. That's considered very advanced, very first class. In other words, you can't fight it, so why not go along with it? Anyway, the parents feel, what else is there to do in life? Why should we stop them? This is the meaning of life, the ultimate goal. I remember in Melbourne, I was describing this, how it's considered quite normal in Australia and New Zealand for parents to tell the daughter, the teenage daughter, early teens, bring him home, let him stay in your room with you. So then one young Australian man in the audience, he objected. He actually raised his hand in the class. Maharaj, I think you're exaggerating. My family was not like that. My family was very strict. They would only allow the boy to stay overnight in the living room. Not in her room. Very strict. So this is the standard today. The parents don't know anything and the children don't know anything. And so, of course, most of you realize this is barbaric. But what are you going to do about your children and then their children? Things become more and more degraded with each generation, unless there is great attachment for following Krishna's instructions and understanding why you follow those instructions. If you can't present why you're following the proper protocols, the proper procedures of human civilization, the children won't take it seriously. Oh, you're just doing these rituals blindly. Don't tell me what grandmother did. We are in a new generation. We're in Australia. We're not in India. Do you understand? That's what they'll tell you. So unless you can explain what is real human civilization and the purpose of a real human civilization, you'll see that your children, or certainly your grandchildren, become more and more wayward, because the ocean of degradation is all around them. And unless the family is strong in bhakti, the children will be swallowed up. And sometimes, it is true, even if the family is strong in bhakti, still sometimes the children go through a wild phase. And this brings grief to the parents. But what can be done? The parents still must execute their responsibility. So this chapter is all about elegant dealings. Not simply sane human dealings, but very elegant, beautiful dealings. Swayambhuva Manu needs to get his daughter married. He presents himself to Kardama Muni, who is a great yogi brahmana. And in presenting himself to Kardama Muni, he says, I have this, everything is fine with me, but I have one item that's disturbing my mind. And that is, I have to get my daughter married. Now notice, he's approaching Kardama Muni, even though Swayambhuva Manu has untold wealth. There's no comparison today of the wealth and power and aristocracy of Swayambhuva Manu. Yet, he's appealing to a penniless sadhu. Please accept my daughter. What's going on here? Kardama Muni, although is very beautiful, wise, austere, he's got no money. Still, Swayambhuva Manu says, you're the man, you're the one, because of your quality, because of your character. So those of you who have children or will have children should take this seriously. That money is not everything. It is something, but it is not the ultimate deciding factor. You've probably heard me explain a mantra that my mother gave me when I was 7 years old or so, which I never had a chance to use. She told me, son, always remember, romance without finance is a nuisance. Never had a chance to use it. So, of course, as you know better than I, household life needs some finance. But Swayambhuva Manu is approaching someone of extraordinary character and qualities, but that person has no money. Of course, Kardama Muni has heaps of mystic power, and you'll find out in the coming chapters how he uses that mystic power to create the most luxurious circumstances for his wife, Devahuti. So that's the point to remember. Swayambhuva Manu was focusing on the prospective husband's qualities, the prospective husband's character. And what about Devahuti? She does have a say in this, even though she's not going out recruiting boyfriends. Like parents often tell their children these days, don't just settle on the first one you meet. Shop around and get some experience. be with this one, be with that one, develop your own perspective. My mother also told me that when I was young. She said, I married my high school sweetheart when I was 20 years old. Don't do like that. It's too young. You better examine many candidates and see. So, as I said, it's called shopping around. Just like you go to George Street or Oxford Street and you look at window after window of boutiques. Yes? Any of you do that? But they don't sell saris on Oxford Street. I see. Saris are for the temple, right? I remember after church, when I was a little boy, my mother and her girlfriend, who lived next door, they would pile all the little children onto the bus, and we would go to the center, the section of New York City, in the area where we lived, where there were many department stores. But they, of course, back then, they'd all be closed on Sunday. Not anymore, but even the ordinary, mundane person would know Sunday is the Lord's day. We don't work, we go to church. But that's back in the 1950s. So the little kids were all, I think I was the oldest, maybe 6 years old, and the others were 5 and 4. The mothers would pile us onto the bus, and we go to the shopping district. And my mother and her girlfriend, they were both in their late 20s. So they would just go from shop window to shop window looking at the fashions. Oh, I hated it. I was 6 years old, and I had already been an hour in church. I wanted to get home because the baseball games started early in the afternoon, the professional baseball games. I wanted to watch TV. And here's mother and her girlfriend, You know, they're in there. They both had children when they were 21, so that means they were about 26, 27. And they're going from one boutique window to another. Look at that! Oh, fabulous! And I'm just thinking, let's get out of here. We got to get home. We got to watch the baseball game. I guess in India it would be, I've got to watch the cricket match, right? So the mothers were so excited, Ooh! Window after window. I couldn't figure out what was going on. They're not buying anything. They're just... I guess the whole point is to look in the window and imagine how that fashion would look on you. Is that it? Is that it? Oh. So I couldn't understand the rasa. So at that age, although I was 6 years old, I started to wonder, there could be some gender differences here. I want to watch baseball. They want to watch fashions in the shop window that they're not going to buy. So how is it that Devahuti knew something about Swayambhuvaman? Not by going out, experiencing on dates. Not even, what is the website? Saradiya.com. She heard from Narada Muni. And just by hearing from Narada Muni about the qualities and character of Kardama Muni, she became irrevocably attached just by hearing. So that may sound miraculous to you. Okay, she may have heard about someone. With our contemporary mindset, we would think, all right, she heard about someone who could be a good option, but that doesn't mean she fully commits. But no, she fully committed just by hearing. And of course, the father was there, Swayambhuva was there, to make sure that she wasn't making any wild decision. So this shows you how hearing surpasses the value of experience. Just by hearing about the qualities of Kardama Muni, she became attached. Properly. She was hearing from an authoritative source, and she's being supervised by her father, so she's safe. Who else was like that just by hearing? Rukmini. She said that she heard about Krishna's qualities, and immediately her consciousness became attached. She would accept no one else. And she said that she wrote in the letter to Krishna that if I don't get you in this lifetime, I'll perform countless austerities over many lifetimes if that's what it takes to gain your hand in marriage. Any of you ever receive a letter like that? If I don't get you in this lifetime, I'll perform severe austerities for countless lifetimes until I attain you. No, such letters are not written these days, right? So Rukmini, just by hearing about Krishna's qualities, of course Krishna is no ordinary person. Hearing about Krishna is the same as associating with Krishna. This lesson we always need to reinforce in our consciousness. Hearing the Hare Krishna mantra is in fact hearing Krishna's flute. Hearing Bhagavad Gita. Actually, when you hear the slokas in Bhagavatam, they are as good as the Hare Krishna mantra. So then you say, why don't we just chant the slokas in Bhagavatam and not chant Hare Krishna? Lord Chaitanya instructed us to chant Hare Krishna. Actually, the Panchatattva mantra is more powerful than the Hare Krishna mantra. But Mahaprabhu didn't say that we chant on beads the Panchatattva mantra. So this is the importance of following the authority. And that's what Devahuti is doing. She's heard from Narada Muni that there is such a qualified candidate. And just by hearing, she took that person into her heart and was fixed on that person. And the father approved. Obviously the father approved because the father is bringing her to Kardama Muni. So in this way, a civilized society proceeds. Without this kind of elegance and sanity in relationship dealings, how do you expect peace? Either on the international level or in the relationship of just between two persons. So everyone's mind is so disturbed these days because they get no relationship peace. They get the promise of a weekend or a few months or a few years of reciprocation, and then everything breaks down. And if they're going to be civil about their disagreement before they divorce, they say, well, your life and my life are going in different directions. When you talk like that, it's supposed to justify everything. It was nice when we were harmonious, but now our lives are going in different directions. So, and everyone will say, yes, that's, you have to acknowledge that reality. In the past, decades ago, there would be worry about the children, and parents would stay together just for the sake of the children. That's the way it was back in the 50s and 60s. Now that's all out the window. What's the notion these days? The best thing for the children is that the parents are happy. So if the parents are happy, separate, divorced from each other, that will be the best thing for the children. Because if the children see that the parents are together and not happy, then how is that going to be nice for the children? So the best thing for the children is that we divorce. That's the thinking these days. And then the new flavor is co-parenting. We're not going to endanger the children, even though we've divorced. One weekend with one parent, the other weekend with the other parent. Co-parenting actually has its benefits. Because in this way, the children get to spend more time with one parent and then with the other parent. But when the parents are together, then the children get less quality time from each individual parent. So better to divorce. That's the way it's presented these days. Maybe you remember, I haven't told this story for quite some time. In Canberra, I was invited to do a program at a quite well-to-do Indian gentleman's home. And he was telling me how his daughter was 8 years old going to school in Canberra. And one day she came home from school and said, "Father, when are you and Mother going to live in different houses? Everyone in my class has parents in one house and another house. The parents live separately in their own house, and my school friends, they can spend one weekend in Mother's house, the next weekend in Father's house. Everyone in my class is like that. Father, when are you going to do this?" So how do you expect social peace? How do you expect individual peace? Because of unstable relationships that you can't depend on. The mind is so restless. So you're dealing with a so-called human civilization in which the minds are so agitated and restless. They can't focus. And of course, everyone needs intoxication in order to function. Intoxication ranging from coffee to alcohol to drugs. It's an acceptable part of life. That in order to be a wholesome person, you need intoxication. It's not enough, your relationships, because your relationships are so unstable and crumbling. So this is human society. And the passions are so unrestricted. You see, the whole Vedic system, and again, unfortunately, we don't have a Vedic culture. Sometimes devotees ask me, "Maharaj, what do you think about Vedic culture?" I was someplace in the USA a couple of months ago at a Sunday feast. And it was time for questions. And one young lady in her 20s raised her hand. "In the books, in your books, I've been reading them, Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that in Vedic culture, ladies are meant to be subordinate." So the audience was, how is Maharaj going to answer this? So she was pressing the point. "The books say that Vedic culture says ladies should be this way and be that way." So I didn't want to get into it, a Sunday feast talk, So I just said, in case you haven't noticed, we don't have Vedic culture today. She said, "Oh, okay." I said that, though, in a different way that she perceived. I said it with lamentation. She received the statement happily. "Okay, no Vedic culture, all right." That's great. All right, I'll chant Hare Krishna. So, yes, unfortunately, we don't have Vedic culture. And of course, Vedic culture means Krishna culture. Krishna is the conclusion of the Vedas. So what Srila Prabhupada did in spreading bhakti all over the world was two things at once, as I often explain. He raised persons to the human platform and at the same time gave them the transcendental process of bhakti. Both things at once. He taught persons how to be a human being and a Krishna Bhakta at the same time. So human life begins with orderly dealings between the genders. Structured dealings. But we don't have those structures in place. You know, even in India, the family system is crumbling. It's not there fully in the adults, and it's diminishing for their children, and don't think about the grandchildren. The whole purpose of these behavioral protocols that you're reading about in this chapter is to safeguard, to protect the human being from lust. Of course, what we call society today doesn't want to protect people from lust. It wants to drown them in lust, and that's considered happiness. Just like when you read, according to the current consciousness, when you read statements in the Shastra that a girl should never be out of home at night with a young man, otherwise no one will marry her. Now what is the standard? If it's found out that the girl has not been out any nights with men, no one will marry her. So it's the reverse. What's wrong with you? You haven't been spending the nights with men before I met you? Something strange about you? That's the way it is. And such a girl or guy is bullied in high school when some of your children may experience that. Why aren't you doing what we're doing? We're partying, we're drinking, we're having so many boyfriends and girlfriends. Why aren't you doing that? Are you strange? What's wrong with you? That's the situation these days. And then the child is made to feel an outcast. And it's the boys, actually, who are so expert at putting on the pressure. Because the boys, of course, want to push on their agenda. What's wrong with you? You think you're someone special? You think you're the Virgin Mary or what? And then what I've heard is that the boys use the girls to get on that girl's case. And then it gets really vicious. Why don't you go to parties with us? Why don't you do what we're doing? Who do you think you are? Ew. Why don't you? You got a smartphone. How come you're not sending any nice pictures to the guys? It's huge. Parents, most of them have no idea of this whole, what's going on. The pressure their children are under. I remember just a few months ago, one young man, he was 16 years old, and he's in high school. He had gone to the Hare Krishna school in Auckland, but they didn't have high school years, so we had to go to the regular high school. So he was telling me what it's like. He was an innocent-looking, good-looking guy, innocent though, not engaged in any of the Kali Yuga activities. And he said, I can't take it anymore. He's in class trying to hear the teacher give her lesson, and the girls are sending him messages, SMS messages. You coming over to my house tonight? And he's trying to concentrate. And he's getting barraged with message after message because the girls are competing with one another. He's an innocent guy. He hasn't done the things we do yet. We'll introduce him. Who can be the first one? And then class is over, and he's trying to leave to go to the next class, and he says the girls are just coming up to him. You know, right next door is an empty classroom. Why don't we step into it right now? And he, no. Oh, you don't want to do that? But you can come over to my house tonight and spend the night. My parents will be very happy. And this is a school in the affluent part of Auckland, the North Shore. They have a saying in Auckland. There are two types of persons who live in Auckland. Those who live on the North Shore and those who want to live on the North Shore. Is North Sydney like that? Further up? Where? No, Northern Beaches. So how do you expect anyone's mind to be peaceful amidst all this madness? Yet when we hear about Kardama Muni and Devahuti and Swayambhuva, we may think, how antiquated, how old-fashioned. But there's a purpose behind it all. If you don't know the purpose of human life, you think this is all unnecessary, controlling, it's rigid. But the purpose is to provide a culture in which the human being can focus on the ultimate goal of life. So unfortunately and sadly, we don't have that culture. But at least we can know about it. We can know what the standard is. And then at least we can understand we don't have human civilization today. So each one of us has to adjust to that reality. Whether you're brahmachari, sannyasi, grihastha, you have to adjust to the reality that you're trying to be Krishna conscious in a non-human civilization. So therefore it's very sweet and consoling to hear about these dealings between Kardama Muni and Devahuti. At least you know what the standard is. You can't apply everything quid pro quo these days. You can't just across the board say, well, this is Veda culture, everyone should do like this. But at least we should know what the standard is, so we won't be fooled into thinking that we live in a human society. All right, any questions? Yes?
Thank you for the nice answer. You're speaking about the head of the body, the society of Brahmanas. You're speaking about the head of the body as Brahmanas. I was just hoping some instructions to see how we can gain that confidence in the society. How can we gain the confidence that we can actually be the head of the society?
How can who gain the confidence? We need real brahmanas, not just persons who wear a thread, but persons who have wisdom and can show austerity, the qualities that Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. Doesn't mean everyone has to be a brahmachari, but if one is going to be a householder, as Prabhupada writes in the purport you read yesterday, the household duty of a man is not to satisfy his sense gratification, but to remain with a wife and children and at the same time attain advancement in spiritual life. One who does not do so is not a householder, but a grihamedhi. Two words are used in Sanskrit literature. One is grihasta and the other is grihamedhi. The difference between grihamedhi and grihasta is that grihasta is also an ashrama or spiritual order, but if one simply satisfies his senses as a householder, then he is a grihamedhi. For a grihamedhi, to accept a wife means to satisfy the senses. But for a grihasta, a qualified wife is an assistant in every respect for advancement in spiritual activities. So that's being a real Brahmana. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, as you talk about the children, they're exposed to so much of Kali Yuga, like especially with the smartphones and everything like that. How do we keep on reinforcing that this is not normal?
You have to do your responsibility amidst the ocean of degradation. You have to know what you're up against and do your part. When the children reach a certain age, they have their independence. They'll make a choice. But your responsibility is to do as much as you can to give them a chance for real life, for Krishna conscious life. Yes.
Maharaj, you just mentioned that Panchatattva mantra is more powerful than the Hare Krishna mantra.
Yes.
Maharaj, can you please elaborate on that?
That's just what Prabhupada explained. And of course, devotees immediately said, "Oh, right, we'll chant the Panchatattva mantra." But Mahaprabhu ordered us to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. We follow the authorities. And who can be a bigger authority than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And the Shastra doesn't say that you should chant the Panchatattva mantra as your daily japa. It says to chant Hare Krishna. The Panchatattva, what are they doing? They're chanting Hare Krishna. Yes?
Guru Maharaj, so by knowing these standards from Vedic culture, from Srimad Bhagavatam, of course we are in so degraded age at the moment. So where do we align ourselves as practicing devotees?
Where do what?
Where do we align ourselves? Where do we set our standard as? To the highest level is impossible, or it's very difficult in the
Highest level of what?
Of Vedic lifestyle, Vedic culture.
We don't live in Vedic times. But at least you can take elements of sanity from the Vedic culture. You can't just apply it across the board. Prabhupada didn't do that. But he informed you of what the real standard is. That's what these purports are doing. The main thing that will save us, and the only thing that will save us, is chanting Hare Krishna amidst this ocean of degradation. That's what Shukadeva Goswami says in 12th canto. Kalaya dosha nide rajan asti heko mahangana kirtanareva krishnasya mukta sangha parambaje. The age of Kali is an ocean of faults. Just like you go to the beach and try to count all the waves coming in, you'll never get to the end. But in that ocean of faults, dosha nidhi, there's one good thing. Asti eko mahangana. Only one good thing. If you're looking for something else that's good, you won't find it. There's only one good thing. Kirtanareva krishnasya mukta sangha parambaje. Simply by hearing and chanting about Krishna, you can cross over the degradation of Kali Yuga. So we stress that. And of course, whatever of these high-class social dealings that you can apply, great. But don't expect that your children are automatically going to take to those very first-class ways of living. Have compassion, understand that you brought them into the world amidst this ocean of degradation, so you're going to have to work hard, and there'll be agony and ecstasy in trying to keep them on the straight and narrow. There's not much difference between bhakti, biological parenting, and spiritual parenting from the spiritual master. Both have agony and ecstasy. Happiness and then disappointment. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for your time. If I may ask this question, I'm a bit unable to understand the time factor here. So, Kardama Muni had already been, he has spent his 10,000 years of time in meditation, and Devahuti is ready to, of an age where she is ready to get married. So, how should I understand this time difference? Like, he is definitely 10,000 years old?
It's a different yuga. And you're not dealing with ordinary human beings. You're dealing with Swayambhuva Manu. And Kardama Muni is no ordinary human being. Otherwise, how is it that Lord Kapiladev takes birth in his family? But I don't understand the point of your question. She's of marrying age. That's the point you should focus on. And he wants to marry. Okay. And the point made in this chapter repeatedly is that he's of suitable age. According to the classic Vedic system, which was followed in India even 80 years ago, 90 years ago, the man is generally about 10 years older than the lady. That's out the window now, of course. But in that way, the man can have an easier time with his ego feeling superior. But these are not Vedic times. So you can just note that she's of marrying age. Her father's in anxiety. Oh, I got to find a husband for my daughter. She's heard about Kardama from Narada Muni. She's already attached in her mind. She doesn't need to go out on dates with him, but to speak of live with him before marriage. I remember in Melbourne, I always do these retreats for students and young professionals, recent graduates who are in the professional world, who've come from India to Australia. And during the retreat, I would talk to them and find out about their life. So 20 years ago, when I started this, you would practically never find young boys and girls living together. Practically never. Now, it's quite common. I asked them, well, you're living together, you're not married, what do your parents think? And they say, we tell the parents we're saving rent money by living together. And then the parents say, oh, saving rent money, oh, yes, you must save money. That's the main thing. So things are going down. And we're trying to go the opposite direction. We're going against the grain, we're swimming against the current. It looks hopeless. But if we cling to the Hare Krishna mantra and teach others to chant Hare Krishna, associate with devotees, Some will see the advantage of having sane social dealings. Not everyone. Some will. So now you can know a little of what it was like for Prabhupada to come from India at such an advanced age and deal with the degraded Wild West. You'll see your children having to cope in that same way. The peer pressure is tremendous. Social media, the friends at school. The parents have to have some sympathy, some compassion about what these children are going to go through. The IT has just changed the world. I was reading one analysis done by a top marketing firm in the USA about what are the most influential tech firms for North America. So number one was Facebook, now called what? Meta. That's number one. Everyone would say, okay, yeah, we can understand that. Number two is Google. We'll jump to number four. Number four is Apple. Number three, Pornhub. Huge online pornography site. In either Montreal or Toronto, Pornhub has its big tall office building, just like you go to George and Pitt Street and you see these tall office buildings. So right in Montreal or Toronto, I forget which one, Pornhub has this tall building, its headquarters. Like some respectable, ANZ or Westpac or something. Yes, Westpac, AMZ building. And Pornhub, yes. Anything else? Yes?
It seems that sometimes it's difficult for people if and when they hear more about the external, what some people might consider impositions of our national dharma and the like, before actually starting to experience a change in their consciousness through hearing and chanting. How can we, as ISKCON, kind of work together to potentially overcome that barrier to entry?
Well, at the programs I do for you, I don't talk about Varnashram Dharma. The main thing is to chant Hare Krishna. If you can also introduce these external elements, it'll be much more supportive for their chanting Hare Krishna. But that's a bonus. The main thing is chanting Hare Krishna. Hearing and chanting about Krishna. At the same time, we need to recognize that we're not living in a supportive social culture. We're living in a culture that's the opposite. Getting worse and worse every year. Just like in the USA. And I've heard the same kind of realities from those who work in hospitals in Australia and New Zealand. In the USA, the Blue Ribbon panel of psychological experts has just said that anyone in the country, that's 350 million people, anyone under the age of 65 should get a checkup for depression. And any youth between the ages of 12 and 24 should get a checkup for depression and anxiety disorder. And the statistics are there, at least in the USA, that they blame it on COVID. Due to COVID, 40% of the population has some anxiety problem or substance abuse problem, 40%. So basically, you're living in a time when Western society is cracking up. So it's good to know about what a supportive culture is, even though we just can't force it on persons, and they're not able to understand it at first. But as they become purified and they read Bhagavatam, they can at least appreciate this makes sense as a whole package. But if you just pull out one item, then you got problems. Just like here, you pull out in the preceding purport. It is the duty of the wife to take charge of household affairs and not to compete with the husband. You don't see the whole symphony. You're just pulling out one element. And it doesn't work just to pull out one element. Or you take one of Prabhupada's statements. I was hearing him lecture in Mayapur in 1976. Yesterday I was listening. The wife should be subordinate to the husband, and the husband should be subordinate to Krishna. So the modern ears hear such a statement. Wife should be subordinate to the husband. But they forget the other part, that the husband should be subordinate to Krishna. We just hear the word subordinate and we flip out. This is Taliban. But if someone is Krishna conscious, someone is actually focused on being the servant of Krishna, why not listen, whether it's the husband or the wife? The point is to submit to Krishna. So Vedic culture assumes that there are real men. Unfortunately, that's not the case these days. So when ladies read such statements, it's the duty of the wife to take charge of household affairs and not to compete with the husband. The assumption is that the husband can control his mind and senses. That's assumed. But when that's not there, the ladies, of course, don't have respect. Subordinate to him? So this is the problem. It's really a man's problem. The men are very weak these days due to so much illicit sex life. They can't give shelter. They can't take care of themselves. They can't control their own senses. What to speak of take the assistance of a wife. They regard the wife as an instrument for sense gratification. Convenient. And then when they get tired of that instrument for sense gratification, they toss her aside, or she tosses him aside, and on it goes. So it's there in Bhagavatam, it's there in Bhagavad Gita, these principles of sane social living. And it's good for us to hear about it, so we know that we don't have a human civilization these days. But as far as just applying it all, as soon as someone walks in the door, Prabhupada never did that. We want everyone to hear about Krishna, to chant Hare Krishna, to engage in Krishna's service. It does help to have a supportive culture, but even in India, that's disappearing. When I fly out of the Calcutta airport, the new international airport, a couple of years ago I was able to go upstairs above the ground floor, where above the departure floor, where the planes come to the gate, and there was a floor above that was empty, and I could just go up there and chant Hare Krishna. The last time I went up there, okay, I can go up peace and quiet, no one's up here, complete empty floor, I'll chant Hare Krishna. And what did I see? 4 pubs. The German pub, the Irish pub, Whiskey a Go-Go. Okay? So those of you who are doing outreach, trying to reach the non-Indian population, you have to be very patient and understand what you're dealing with. It's going to take some time to cross that bridge. Especially those of you coming from Bharat who want to reach the wider population, you have to be very patient, and it's going to take some time for you to get over the shock. For you to realize there is no structure, there is no regulation, there are no behavioral guidelines. Anything goes, anything. It'll probably take at least 10 years to get up to speed. But I tell devotees that just think what it was like for the first Western devotees that Prabhupada took to India with him. Like Jaipataka Maharaj, Giriraj Swami, so many others. It took them some time to get up to speed. So if it can happen one way, it can happen the other way too. It just takes time. You have to be really wanting to do it. Of course, those first Western devotees who went with Prabhupada to India, they wanted to cross the bridge because Prabhupada gave them that service. So you have to want to, and then be very tolerant and patient. There'll be agonies, there'll be ecstasies. And you'll see how much you assume should be there, and then you'll realize it's not there. So we tried to get persons to chant Hare Krishna, and then we talk about the 4 rules, and they're reading in Bhagavatam about Vedic culture. It's intriguing, but at the same time, some of it they don't understand. You have to keep them moving along, keep moving, keep reading. And gradually it starts to make sense, especially as they see chaos, social chaos all around them. And as you know from your programs, almost every one of the persons attending your programs at the Bhakti House in Erskineville, a glorious effort. Practically everyone has relationship burnout problems. It really bugs them. They want a stable relationship, but they have no idea how to carry on a stable, lasting relationship. It's all about immediate physical and emotional buzz. And that's not what Kardama Muni and Devahuti are about. They're surrounded by a whole structure that keeps the hormones under control so that there are beneficial social dealings, so that everyone is protected. Just like in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you read Prabhupada saying, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasya viduhu. This knowledge is meant for the Rajarshis, the saintly kings, because it's their duty to protect the people from lust. Now try saying that to your prime minister. You haven't been doing your duty, protecting the people from lust. He'll look at you like you're crazy. The purpose of the government is to facilitate as much uninhibited and uncontrolled lust as possible. And that way people are happy. So yes, sometimes I do think this is a mission impossible, but then I think of Prabhupada landing in the USA, and he said, I never expected these persons to take to bhakti. He said, as soon as I mention the 4 regular principles, they'll tell me, go away. But still, he persevered with Mahaprabhu's order. Just like parents have to persevere training their children. There'll be setbacks, there'll be disappointments. And as I said before, have compassion about what the children are undergoing. What's on their smartphones, what's on their laptops, what's going on in school. Like I told you about that young boy, 16 years old, who wants to be a devotee, and what does he have to go through at school? It's like a torture chamber. The girls can't tolerate it that he's a nice-looking guy and he's innocent. Like a fruit that hasn't been tasted by anyone else. If I get him, I'll get the fame. So every day they're just having a go at him. Step into an empty classroom with me. Come home at night. My parents will be very happy if you spend the night. It's crazy. So just think what it's like for him. What young teenager could stand up to all that? Even with good parents. It's hell. So it's very helpful for us to hear about the marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. It's very purifying because it's Srimad Bhagavatam. And as Sanatana Goswami says, every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is saturated with Krishna prema. Kardama Muni and Devahuti are no ordinary persons. In their family, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Kapila Dev, will appear. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.